As the world watches on, Britain's newest Prime Minister Boris Johnson faces a difficult task of delivering Brexit, but it's not just the UK and the European Union which will feel the impact of the deal.
To discuss, we're joined by the CEO of the European Australian Business Council, Jason Collins. Good morning, Jason. And domestically, how will Australia be impacted by Brexit if, it's a big if, and when this deal goes through?
Well, good morning. It's certainly lots going on in London right now, as we've seen in that report. Well, it does mean a lot for Australia because Australia has a very long, of course, enduring relationship with the UK, as well as within the context of the overall European Union. Because the UK is a member of the European Union, effectively it's the one trading bloc, and when we aggregate it all together, the EU is the second largest trading partner for Australia, with about 25% of that actually bilaterally with the UK. So the nature in which the UK extracts itself from the EU will have a big effect on those trading relationships that we have with the UK, not only in goods, services, but also in investment.
So, as you mentioned, the second largest trading partner with Australia, Jason. So the Australian government basically, says a post-Brexit deal, again, if it does happen, could be done within months or even weeks with the UK. Tell us more how you think it will look.
Sure. Well, look, Australia has launched free trade agreement negotiations with the European Union at a time when it expected, or in the lead up to it, certainly expected the UK would be still part of that. But in terms of a deal with the UK, certainly there's great prospects, and the Australian government has focused on that as an opportunity post-Brexit. But the key question is, how does the UK leave the EU? If it was, I mean, it's unlikely, but if it was the fact that the UK was to remain part of the custom union, for example, then the UK would be precluded from doing its own free trade agreement. So it just underlines that the uncertainty over the way in which the UK will leave the EU will have big flow-on effects in terms of future trade deals and the like.
Well, that's the issue here, isn't it? Basically, when, if, how is it going to happen? It's already claimed scalps the whole Brexit situation.
I'm sorry, I missed the last.
Or just say it's already claimed prime ministers. So Brexit, how will Boris Johnson get it done? And I suppose if he does, and he meets all these markers to October, November, he'll have a mandate for leadership for quite some time.
Well, indeed, and as the report was speculating, whether or not in the end he's forced or wishes to go to a general election to reaffirm a mandate or to seek a new mandate is just one of the many questions that are confronting this issue right now, because what has been quite remarkable, I think, during this whole process has been the resilience and, I guess, the resolve of European leaders not to buckle under the pressure of the negotiations and to be quite unanimous in their view about the deal that will be offered to the UK. So the new Prime Minister has said that he wants the backstop deleted. He wants various things, but it's certainly completely unclear. And if some of the recent statements from Europe can be followed, and we assume they must be, that the backstop is not going to be deleted, in which case, where does that leave us? So the prospects of a no-deal Brexit are very alive right now, and barring a major change, a major development that none of us have really foreseen, we could be heading to a no-deal Brexit, which is in no one's interests, either Europe, the UK, certainly not for trading partners like Australia and others.
Well, the Scottish PM, Nicola Sturgeon, there's a strong message there. She was saying yesterday that Boris Johnson, if he continues the preparations, there's going to be an independence referendum because the Brexit plan would basically hurt the Scottish economy. Ireland said yesterday that the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson's approach was very unhelpful. So, I mean, this is just the start, really.
Yeah, look, it's all up for negotiation, and one would like to imagine that rationally, in the sense that it's in no one's interest to get to a cliff edge, that there will be a compromise, that there will be an accommodation that's reached somewhere between now and October 31, or if there's going to be an election or some other mechanism for extending that even further. But it must be remembered that about 45% of all of the UK's exports go to the European Union. So it's a very major trading relationship for the UK. By comparison, it's about 13% with the US, and there's been talk about a UK-US free trade agreement. But really, fundamentally, the UK has to sort out its relationship with the EU, and if there is no deal, that of course means very significant things for UK businesses, but also for those countries like Australia that trade with both the EU and with the UK. So the Prime Minister has taken up the job where it's hard to see how more divided the UK could possibly be, whether it be through, as you mentioned, the legitimate concerns of the Scottish, the Northern Irish in terms of preserving an open border for goods and services and people in Northern Ireland and the Republic. You've got a very much a divided Conservative Party where the Prime Minister has moved very quickly to distance or to remove all of the major Remain supporters. So there's a Herculean task in front of the government and not a lot of time to sort a lot of key questions out. So it's not going to be a very happy or relaxed summer for people over in the UK right now.
No, and it's going to be nice and colourful. Anything that Boris Johnson has his hands on is nice and colourful. CEO of the European Australian Business Council, Jason Collins, thank you. Have a great weekend.
Terrific. Thanks for having me.